Hi there. My name is Danny Black. Recently, I was approached about speaking on LGBT representation in Star Trek. I wanted to go ahead and touch on this by saying, first of all, Star Trek has always been important to me since the first time I watched it because of the fact that it always promotes IDIC, infinite diversity in infinite combinations. That part is significant to me, and I think probably to all Star Trek fans, regardless of whether or not they are LGBT. Knowing that there's a place in the future where we can all belong and all take part is massively important to not only inspiring us to do better now, but reminding us that all the work we do to make this world better someday could add up. As far as Star Trek LGBT representation goes, I wanted to go ahead and take a step by step look at Star Trek and its evolution of LGBT representation. Because watching it, for me, has always been in chronological order, as far as release date, that is. My father first introduced me to the original series. He had watched Enterprise when I was a kid, but it was too mature for me at that age. When that show came out, I was probably about 10 or 11 years old. So we started watching reruns of the original series. And as we now know, Sulu is canonically gay. We see in the Star Trek Kelvin timeline that he actually has a husband or partner and a child. Now, in the original series, that wasn't something that was really talked about. But I mean, when you see Sulu running around the ship all sweaty and greased up with a sword, I think we could have all picked up on that if we were looking close enough. George Takei has always been an advocate since the time he was able to, up until now, for LGBT representation and the rights of human beings to be themselves. Now, watching Star Trek, the original series, and not knowing he was gay, I'll still tell you something. He was one of my favorite characters. I always identified with Spock because of the fact that he had that split he was always struggling with. I definitely got that being raised in a conservative household and yet having liberal ideas. However, Sulu was the steadfast character for me. Whenever somebody mentioned, "Oh, have you seen Star Trek the original series?" my first thought was, you know what, I really like that guy Sulu. He's the badass on board. And watching him go consistently from the original series to the animated series to the films, and then watching him in real life as he told his story and spoke up for his community, I could not have been more happy to find out that George Takei was a member of my community, the LGBT community, but also that he believed Sulu was always part of that community. Knowing that one of the most steadfast figures in the original series crew was canonically, at least to him and now in the Kelvin timeline, gay, told me that there is hope for a good representation for our community. Sometimes it's just about being a normal human being and contributing positively to society while also earning the respect of your peers. To me, that was a big first step. Just watching that happen with Sulu. Now, going to the next generation, I, as a non-binary person, was shook the first time I watched the episode where Riker falls in love with Soren, the Janai character. Watching somebody who is a character from a non-binary planet, or at least a planet where having a specific choice is looked down upon, choose for themselves. This is who I identify as. I'm going to be that, no matter what anybody says, was huge to me. It told me that, you know what? There is a place where we can talk about identity and the choice to live authentically within that and to love authentically within that. And of course, the end of the episode was absolutely crushing as Soren was forced to conform through force to the non-binary ideology of her planet. And that has always said a lot to me about the fact that societies, as a whole, will always have a hard time grasping gender concepts, regardless of which side of the fence they're on. And it also tells me that there are people out there, like Riker, who will 100% stand up for and literally risk everything for that person to still live authentically if they so choose. As we continue on, there are other characters in like Deep Space Nine where we have the mirror universe and we see Kira and Dax making out, right? And to a lot of people, like when I was watching it the first time, people around me were saying that's just a cheap cop out. That's just putting the gay agenda into Star Trek. And maybe to a point it was to instigate a conversation that wasn't really fleshed out as well as it could have been. But to me, I was happy as a clam because I saw two characters that I deeply respected, regardless of their universe, go against everything that we as the audience think is appropriate to be in love or to at least find happiness. And sometimes, even in heteronormative society, there's talk down on people who are loving without marriage or without vows to each other or having one night stands, whatever it might be. But the reality is, no matter what your gender, no matter your identity, no matter your sexuality, to me, that episode said love, even if it's temporary. If that is authentically what you want to do in that moment or for the rest of your life, you have the right to do it. Maybe that's a stretch, but that's my opinion. We continue on. We see, all kinds of different romances in Voyager. We see the issue of species and color being overcome, but we're not here to talk about that today. That can be another video. But we see a progression from Star Trek the original series to Voyager, the last of the block, as it were, before we got into the new Trek era. And we see conversations about love who you want to love. Love authentically. Don't let anyone tell you that your color or any other feature of you gets to dictate how happy you are or what rights you have. That's significant to me. But I will admit, I'm a new Trek fan. Discovery, Strange New Worlds, even Picard, I know it comes off of Next Generation. These things are all within my life. So to me, these are all new Trek. Everything else I've been able to binge. I've had to wait every week, sometimes months, sometimes years, to watch these new Trek videos, these new Trek shows. And I'll tell you what, watching Stamets fall in love twice, despite death getting in the way, to a man, a wonderful doctor, melted my heart. This, to me, was the first time on screen where we got to see a long-term, committed, beyond death and back, relationship where two people not only fell in love over and over again, but to the point where they were willing to literally adopt someone. And that someone being very special to me. That someone being Adira. As we jump into the future, we get to meet them. A non-binary, kick-ass officer that ends up joining the ship and becoming, to me, one of the greatest examples of non-binary and transgender love there will ever be in Star Trek. As I watch Discovery and I see Adira and Gray, and I get to see what we already kind of talked about with Dax really fleshed out, where, you know what? There's multiple genders within this person. And all of them live in a harmony because there's always a spirit of good intent, of learning, and ultimately of service to that character. I bawled when Adira showed up, and I bawled when Gray showed up. Because watching these two characters bring forward a new reality for us Trek fans, not only to talk about it, but as we see with the Doctor and Stamets, be affirmed by the show. There's a point where they're talking about the they-them issue, and it's explained and it's moved on from because it doesn't need to be obsessed over. That was powerful. And as we get into Strange New Worlds, we have Captain Angel, a character played by a transgender person without any pause. And the message they send about being authentic to who you are rather than what makes you who you are. As Spock is struggling with human versus Vulcan. Those are all pieces of you rather than a choice. This video here is running about 10 minutes or so, so I'll wrap it up. But I would like to say, in response to the question of LGBT Star Trek representation and me, I am in love with Sulu from the original Enterprise being who he canonically is now. And honestly, vocally, be himself while being direct with the captain and doing what he did with his own ship to protect the Enterprise, to the characters like Dax and Nerys as they're kissing in the Mirror Universe, all the way up to the blatant and upfront representation of non-binary people like myself with Discovery. It's a wonderful universe. And to me, it tells me that I can be steadfast. I can be true to myself, whether it's a moment, a lifetime, one special person, whatever it might be. But I can also collaborate and exist without question, without doubt. Star Trek is teaching us that there is a place for everyone. Straight people, gay people, trans people, intersex people, whatever it might be. No one is bound by who they are, but rather only by their potential. And that can always change as we grow and learn together, as we boldly go where no one has gone before.